que I announced that in other part of the country. Last week I was in Mississauga, and I sent a message very simple: enough is enough. And that's a message that has been resonating across communities, families, and people across the nation, understanding that the best way to tackle crime was to go after criminals, but to follow the money. This is one of the best tools we have in our toolbox, and today we're doing exactly the same here in Montreal.
Could you just summarize, how is this new force, I guess, that you're announcing today, how is this going to really impact people who are victims of fraud and extortion?
Well, let me say a few words, and maybe Jan or Fadi may want to add, because this is, again, I'm the one in front of the podium, but I just want to make sure the real people who do all the work are behind me. You know, what I did when we saw the issue around intelligence, and you've seen what we've done in Mississauga and Brampton, Prime Minister did that in Surrey, I picked up the phone because I'd seen, for example, the wave of criminal activity, particularly with respect to arson in the city of Montreal and around. I called the director and I said, what can we do to help? What you're seeing today, if you want to make it very simple, you're adding tools in the toolbox. So the men and women behind me in uniform, if you want them to be more effective, if you want them to be able to address the crime and prosecute and open investigation, they need intelligence. This is all based on intelligence. And I can tell you, talking to our partners of the FBI, whether it's the one at Treasury, Secret Service in the United States, Serious Fraud Office, Guardia de Finanza, follow the money is the best way. Fadi said it very openly. If you go at the heart of the flow of money, that's where you start detecting patterns. That's where our agents, because we're putting boots on the ground now, so you'll have financial intelligence officers that will be closely working with our partners of the police force, whether it's the RCMP, Sûreté du Québec, all of them. And by working closely together, we were saying that these kind of crimes, they operate very quickly, they move from jurisdiction to the other, so you can't be sitting in your office and waiting for a call. You need to have the boots on the ground. Today, what's the difference? We're putting boots on the ground. Our officers of FINTRAC will be working hand in hand with the police force here in Montreal, like they do in other parts of the country, but I must tell you there's pockets that we're trying to address, and we'll continue to do that with our international partner. And we'll have a financial crime agency. You may be aware that I've announced that we'll have a dedicated police force that will go after that, but this is a good measure because in every event we'll need to work with our police of jurisdiction. So I may turn to Jan, and maybe Fadi may want to add.
Yes, thank you so much. And today what we're announcing, it's a new tool. This is an addition. So there's a lot of work that have been done, and which is done on the field now. But adding this tool, this is something extremely important. And the other message that we're doing today, and that's because of the partnership, you can see federal, provincial, and municipal working together. You can see all those agencies behind me working all together. So this is a strong message against organized crime. This is over. This is over. We've been working to fight organized crime, and this is a direct impact to businesses, to people. Just at the beginning of this year, there's been a survey in Canada, and 4 Canadian out of 5 said they've been a victim of a fraud or an attempted one. You all receive messages all day long on your cell phone, and you don't even answer them anymore. But people are using that to get money. That money is either used by organized criminal organization or organized crime, and that's why we're so happy today. The message is that we're all working together. There's no boundaries. We're all working together, and extremely happy that we've done this announcement here in Montreal. It's a strong statement. Thank you so much.
And one more question for Minister Champagne.
Yes.
Sorry, just for my colleague.
No, I'm
Yeah.
offering the floor to
Yeah.
any who wants to
Well,
to contribute.
He's the MC.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I have a few jobs.
I'm just, for my colleague at National, are you going to be temporarily cutting gas taxes to give drivers relief like Australia and Italy are doing currently?
Well, thank you for the question. You may be aware this morning we had a G7 finance minister, energy minister, central bank governors. We had the head of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the International Energy Agency, the OECD. So my point is that all hands on deck. I mean, we're following the situation very carefully, making sure that we understand the volatility. You know, what I can say to folks who are watching, if the world was uncertain in 2025, 2026 has seen the world being volatile and complex. I mean, the kind of actions we're seeing on the ground with respect to the Strait of Hormuz has created all sorts of issues, whether it's about gas, whether it's about oil, whether it's about fertilizer, whether it's about jet fuel. We're watching also the trend with respect to shipping. We're watching what we call water on oil to see what is the, where are the choke points. We're watching the strategic petroleum reserves, the impact, the release that was announced. And what I can say to you now is that we are monitoring the situation very carefully. We've always been there for Canadians. But I would say for now, the best thing that we can do is to do what we've done, which is be part of this release or adding petroleum assets to the release that was done. You know, Canada contributed. We don't have strategic reserve, but we could have production. That's what we did. And so we're monitoring the situation very carefully with our partners, both domestically but also internationally.
Prochaine
Madame?
question.
Natalia Weichsel from CBC News. Question to whoever is willing or able to answer. We've
They're
seen
all
this.
able. I don't know about willing, but able for sure.
I'm looking
everyone.
forward to who will take it on then. Well, we're seeing this multi-government approach,
Sure.
saying that this is necessary because fraud has become much more difficult to detect. I was wondering if someone could give us an idea or perhaps some examples of what that looks like in 2026.
Fatty, you're the man.
You know what, I'm gonna do something different.
Okay,
If you don't mind,
for sure.
Maya? I do respect my people. They are the one.
Okay.
Maya. I gotta let Maya answer you. Tell her
Hi.
what you do exactly.
Can we lower this?
Yes.
I tried, trust me. But I can do more. Listen, I'll try to help you else you. I tried.
This is not happening. Can you
Hi.
please repeat that nice question?
For sure. So
Thank you.
we're seeing this multi-government approach here, everyone that's gathered saying that this is necessary because fraud is so much more difficult to detect. I was wondering if you could give us a few examples of what that looks like in 2026, and if you could also introduce yourself with your full name.
Yes. So I'm Maya Allier. I'm the detective sergeant that's in charge of the cybercrime team for the Montreal Police. I've been at the head of cybercrime for 8 years now, and I've been doing cybercrime for over 15. So I guess that's why the chief pointed to me. Thank you. So what it looks like in 2026 is a very complex question, but at the same time, it's a very simple answer. There's multiple technologies that are being used, whether it's social media or emerging tech, when we talk about intelligence, artificial intelligence, or we talk about deep fakes, deep voice. So sometimes we ask me the question, will you address artificial intelligence? The thing is, this is just one of the facets that are being used in frauds. So how we used to do crime before with frauds, like the traditional way, now we're just multiplying the frauds by using every emerging tech that you can see. So this is just the complexity that's added to whatever it was before. So we used to send you like a malware through a link. We still do this, but then at the same time, we'll send you a text, we'll give you a call, you'll hear your grandmother talk on the phone, and it's not your grandmother. So this multiplicity of emerging texts that are being used is making citizens so insecure, because you're like, am I talking to somebody I know? Who's sending me this message? Who do I call back? Is this really my bank? And if I have one message today is for everybody, do not trust any technology that comes through your phone. Your bank will not send you a text. The government will not send you a text. The police will not arrest you by phone. And if it's talking a foreign language, just hang up.
Is it safe then to assume that one part of this strategy is the law enforcement aspect, but also public awareness? How does that fit into sensibiliser la population?
I think that, do you want me to say it in French or English?
Just in English.
Okay, so I think we have to work in prevention. The public is not aware of what's happening. 9 out of 10 citizens in like everywhere in Canada is giving willingly their information online. For me, it takes 5 minutes to track you to see almost what you've eaten the day before. We are very public online. We do not have safety parameters. We do not care about safety parameters, and we're deploying this to the next generation. So yes, we have a lot of work for safety awareness to the public, but we also have to help law enforcement work with schools, with people that do education for our kids. It's starting very, very early, and we have to touch the vulnerable population, which is our elderly that do not know how technology works. So it's the law. We have to work with legislation that has to change and understand the virtual world and the virtual vocabulary that's being used. We have to work with law enforcement and everybody that wants to help. We need a helping hand.
Thank you.
Prochaine question.
You don't know, but you can put that in your article. Maya is an angel to many families. I can assure you of that. She's an angel, and that's why you see, Fadi was right, she is quite an expert if you want to learn. Madam.
Hi, this is Leora Schertzer from the Montreal Gazette. Minister Champagne, you touched on this a little bit in French, that you've made a similar announcement in Mississauga and other cities, but how come you're here in Montreal making this national announcement, and is there anything specific about this city that makes it a hub for fraud and extortion compared to other major cities?
Sure. Well, thank you for your question. I may ask Fadi or maybe the mayor to add to that. I mean, there's a reason we're in Montreal. You're quite right. We started in Mississauga. Like I said, there was Brampton, Surrey, because those are pockets. You know, we've looked with intelligence. Where are these? It's well, you've seen some in Winnipeg, Edmonton, but it's really pockets in part of the country where people have used extortion, but in different ways. You may have seen when it comes to other regions, sometimes it's the South Asian community that has been targeted. Other communities we've seen in the country. It seems that in Montreal, but I leave that to the experts and maybe our colleagues from la Sûreté du Québec or the RCMP, others who may want to comment. But from my own, and by the way, I hope Fadi will keep answering my messages. I know you said don't trust no caller ID, but I hope Fadi will keep taking my messages. But I would say that when we looked at Montreal, and you don't need to be an expert in crime, but the wave of arsons that you have seen targeting bars, targeting restaurants, targeting small businesses, requires us to pay special attention. And the mayor has made a point that this city is a safe city, a city where people want to come to live, and we're happy to do our part. That's why I called the mayor, I called the chief of police as well to say the kind of, and I can go into the operational detail because we're fighting crime. If I tell you, well, they'll know what I'm going to do. But what I can tell you is that the people you see behind me are going to deploy assets on the ground to make sure that the following of the money will have the biggest impact. Because once we have people on the ground, we're able to take the information that the police force wants from us. They get a warrant, we get the information, they can go quickly because speed is of the essence when you want to track the money. And as Fadi said, you may focus on the small amount, but guess what? Now we can focus also on the big amounts. Because with our partners in the financial institution, we'll be able to see the flow of money and who's behind. There's always a beneficial owner somewhere. And with our partners internationally, I think they'll find it far more difficult to do that. And you've heard from Maya, we have a number of tools at our disposal. But I may ask the mayor to comment on Montreal.
Thank you for the question. I think, Montreal, compared to other cities, I think a crime is a crime, right? A citizen that gets to be impacted by extortion, whether you're in Toronto or Mississauga or Surrey or Montreal, you're a victim. Right now, the sentiment of security in Montreal is, well, if you ask on the street, that will be one first thing people will say, is that the city that we knew in Montreal today people feel like they're not safe. Is it a perception? Maybe. Is it real factual crimes that we've seen? Yes, absolutely. And that also feeds on that sentiment of insecurity. So I think the announcement today is saying to the citizens, the only way to fight crime and organize crime is to organize ourselves. And that's what we're doing today. And we're making sure that the financial departments, all the levels of police and And thank you, Maya, for the comments that you made, because I think the complexity of what we're seeing today, and maybe it'll just be more complex. When you talk about artificial intelligence, I mean, again, Montreal is the hub of the research on artificial intelligence, so let's make sure that we also use that to help us fight the crime.
That's crystal clear, but I just want to, and you're right, Montreal is a safe city, but there's no boundaries. Organized crime, they don't know any boundaries, and that's the reason why we'll be all working together. So Montreal, yes, we're so happy to be here today, but take that just to make sure that you do understand we'll be fighting crime all across the province. Because yes, we do have issues in Montreal, we do have issues in Laval, Longueuil, Côte-Nord. Lately, we had many issues with bikers. So we'll be fighting crime wherever they are. So that's the reason why we want to create a hub today. But Montreal is a safe city, happy to be here.
Allez-y.
Thank you, everyone, for your answers. And just one small follow-up question about the Air Canada CEO. What do we need to see from the next Air Canada CEO, and what does Air Canada have to think about as they select them?
Well, I think it's a question for the board, but let me obviously say, you would want to have a CEO which can express himself in both official language of this country. Like I said, it's a matter of importance to their customers first. And I would say it's also a matter of leadership. You know, like I said, I fly regularly, as you know, I'm on my way to China just tomorrow morning. You know, the agents that I come across, the pilots that I come across, the ground staff that I come across, you know, the vast majority of them, they're very pleased to be able to express themselves in the language you prefer, into official language in the country. So I think for me it's a question of leadership, and I'm sure that the board will have certainly reflected on the latest episode. And I think it's a respect for their customers, but it's also, you know, we ought to have people who serve Canadians, especially when you're talking about transportation and all the sectors where you interact with customers. I think it's just it's the right thing to do, but it's also the smart thing to do, I would say, for them as they decide who's going to be their next CEO.
Financial crime is it's global crimes. So you cannot look at what's happening just in one place. You really have to look around the world to see what are those crimes doing, how they are evolving, what are the new tactics. So when you look at your legislative or regulatory framework, you cannot think that you're done. You will always need to adapt to ensure that you fill the gaps, but also that you develop the tools to be able to be agile and react as fast as those criminals are doing. In the Bill C-12 that was adopted this week, FinTrack has the authority to provide fine to institutions that are not respecting the obligation under the regime. But those fines this week were raised to a level of times 40. So the same obligation, but for the infraction, FinTrack will now have the opportunity to, or the possibility to actually increase the amount of fine for the same infraction. Times 40, but there's also in the same bill criminal activities that the infraction have been increased substantially as well.
Dernière question.
Question for
Ils ont hâte d'aller sur le terrain. Allez-y.
yeah. Hi, Minister Jeff from Jeff Steven from Global TV.
Yes, sir.
Are you going to drop the GST from newly built homes in other provinces, as you agreed to in Ontario?
Well, thank you for the question. What we've announced, and we tabled legislation last week, was to provide a boost, I would say, to increase the supply of housing and a boost in construction. What we had witnessed in major urban centers across our nation was a dip in home sales, particularly in markets in major cities across the country. So what we've decided is that to offer immediate support to provinces and territories. Our friends in Ontario have decided to use that to offer a rebate of both HST and GST. In other provinces, having talked to my colleagues in different parts of the country, they may use that money to support more construction, to support more housing supply, to support construction workers. They may do that with new programs, or they may do that with existing programs. So what we wanted to do is constructive federalism. You don't always have one solution fit all, but we wanted to support every provinces and territory to increase the housing supply in the nation. Merci tout le monde. Thank you very much. Merci.